Hello viewers of Afrique Media, thanks again for joining us here in Lomé on the sideline of the second edition of the Lomé Peace and Security Conference, Lomé Peace and Security Forum. We have the opportunity during this important forum to meet with Professor Morten Boas. You're coming all the way from Norway and you are attending the Lomé Peace and Security Forum. Once again, let's just say welcome to Lomé.
Thank you, and thanks for having me here. And it's great to be back here. I was also here for the first installment of the Lomé Peace and Security Forum 2 years ago, and it's great to be back.
Interesting to know that you participated in the first edition, and this is the second edition. What has been the outcome based on your follow-up after the first edition?
No, I mean, it's first and foremost, it's up to the local people here to follow up on the recommendations and the discussions and the dialogue here. But I do think that, first, I mean, the forum in itself is putting Togo on the map. It's putting Togo on the West Africa map, it's putting Togo on the Sahel map, it's putting Togo on the Africa map, but also globally. I mean, this is a forum that is being watched, and it's being watched because there are some not only important people here, but there is relatively free and frank dialogue and discussions as well. So I think it's an important thing that the Togolese people and the Togo government has started.
Yeah, Togo is putting Africa on the map with regards to the changing geopolitics around the world, and it's coming at a time where Africa is finding its place in this changing geopolitics. This initiative by Togo, which seeks to find homegrown solutions to African problems, do you think Africa has the chance to succeed with such an initiative?
I think that, I mean, Africa, I mean, one thing, it's difficult to talk about Africa because, I mean, Africa it's 52 very different countries. So I think we sometimes do these countries a disservice when you talk about Africa's interest, Africa this, Africa that. I mean, Africa is even much more diverse than Europe, for example, and it's hard to talk about sort of a European common interest. But what I can say is that African countries, like the rest of the world, are now at a very critical juncture. It's a critical juncture because for the first time since 1945, the country that in many ways built the post-Second World War order is now the country that seems to be tearing at that very order, and that is the United States. And I mean, in Africa, like in my home country, Norway, I mean, we feel what is happening and we are insecure of what is going to happen. And of course this affects poor countries even more than a rich country like my own country. For example, I mean, the cuts that the Trump administration has done to US aid has enormous implications for parts of Africa. But on the other side, we are also seeing a much more multipolar, even almost a word like that looks like a multiverse, and that means that there are so many new players that are also trying to play different games in Africa, and that, if that is used correctly, it's an opportunity for African countries. If it's not used correctly, it will again be a disservice to them. But I do think that there is new leadership around that is slightly better placed and with stronger administrations to this time make use of these new opportunities that are emerging, because there are huge challenges in front of us. From there are still war and violence on the continent, there is a climate crisis that is coming and so on. So there is plenty of challenges, but there are also plenty of new opportunities, including the fact that Africa sits on some of the most sought after new mineral resources like lithium, like new rare earth minerals and so on. So there are plenty of opportunities. The question is how to grab them.
We've seen several world powers who have shown interest in trying to help Africa in resolving some of these security challenges, but over the years we've not seen positive outcome. Now Africa is taking a challenge to find homegrown solutions to such problems. Do you think they will be able to find such solutions, considering that we've seen superpowers, the United States, France, China, Russia, you know, all of them are on the continent, but then we've not had such solutions. Do you think Africa can solve its problems by itself?
I think so, and I mean, as I said in the panel that I have presented, that I mean, all conflict is really local. That also means that all solutions that are sustainable must be local. And I mean, there are two ways of looking at this. I mean, if you look at Africa after the end of colonialism, I mean, here the formal sort of colonialism ended in the 1960s. I mean, it was so much uncertainty when this happened. And in a way you could say that this has gone, in fact, remarkably well. So many new states coming into being. And apart from the war in the Congo that dragged in the neighboring countries, we haven't seen really large-scale interstate wars on this continent. It's been the one in the Congo, and then we had the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Apart from that, large parts of this continent, with all these new, relatively immature states with weak state structures, they have been remarkably peaceful, actually. So, I mean, there is two ways of looking at that, and sometimes we only look at what is not working in Africa. And I think it's important, particularly for finding African solutions, that the Africans themselves, I mean, the people of Togo, the people of Mali, the people of South Africa, whatever, that they look at what is actually working in our countries and ask themselves, should we be more concerned trying to build on what is working rather than being obsessed with everything that we are lacking? Because, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of things that still lack in Togo. There's a lot of things that lack in Mali. There's a lot of things that lack in Uganda, Kenya, or whatever. But there are also a lot of things that work. And it's important, I think, to concentrate on that. And by concentrating on what actually works, I think it's also better, easier to find solutions to what is not working, rather than doing the opposite thing, being completely obsessed, which I think that part of the international interventions, be it peaceful human development interventions or more sort of peacekeeping interventions, has been obsessed with what is lacking.
And one of the key focus on the forum has to do with looking at or trying to find ways to resolve the crisis in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a crisis that has been going on for a while. We've seen different peace initiatives, and we are still waiting for results from that. Do you think this conference or this forum will be able to handle such crisis and bring a lasting solution?
I don't think that this forum ever can even imagine to be a conflict resolution forum. And I don't think it should try either, and I don't think the organizers actually think it should become that either. But what it can be is a platform, again, of dialogue, conversations, and bringing these conversations to other parts of Africa. Because for the time being, I mean, the conversation, the continental conversations on DR Congo has been sort of concentrated around the neighbors. And the problem here is that these neighbors also have a lot of their own interest at stake here. So bringing in and sort of taking this conversation to a place like Togo, because I mean, there's probably a lot of things you could say about Togolese foreign policy, but that Togo has a real sort of self-interested stake in what is going on in DRC, I don't think so. So in a way, I mean, Togo and others could then sort of at least present some sort of neutral ground for these critical conversations that needs to happen around what has been a disaster zone. I mean, I have worked in Eastern Congo, in North Kivu, and I've been there also through some of the really bad things, not the last ones, but some of these previous rebel offensives, for example. And it is in fact remarkable that this place still hangs together as well as it do, due to the fact, if you take into consideration that there has been war and violence here since the early 1990s. And let's hope now that some of these new initiatives can bring some new momentum to some sort of a dialogue, because none of the parties can win this on the battlefront. They need to find some sort of common ground. And really, if you look at this from an economic point of view, Rwanda needs DRC, but DRC also needs Rwanda. And they should find common ground, because they could turn what for over 30 years now has been a zero-sum game into a plus-sum game. That means there is advantages for all parties to collaborate rather than to continue this conflict.
We're looking at the new initiatives in bringing new momentum in, just like you highlighted. When you look at the African Union, other regional organizations which have not been able to resolve such problems, from your observation, where do you think, or what do you think is the difficulty, and where have they been lacking with regards to not being able to resolve such conflicts?
Well, I mean, exactly the same thing that we can now sit here and say about the African Union. We could also say about the United Nations, right? So, I mean, it is difficult because there are certain interests that also have an interest in conflicts continuing. So it's difficult to say that why haven't the AU solved this? I mean, it's not easy for a regional body that is supposedly should organize 52, 53 countries to be a conflict resolution mechanism. Again, I mean, I think the role of the AU is to provide its good offices. It is to do conflict analysis, bring things to the attention of heads of state. But at the end of the day, I mean, this conflict can only be solved. First, there needs to be some sort of rapprochement between Kigali and Kinshasa. But Kinshasa also whether it like it or not, it needs to negotiate a new social contract in North Kivu. A new social contract that also must be some sort of a contract with Kigali. But it needs to be built on a common ground and that tries to turn what, unfortunately, both Kinshasa and Kigali treats this as a zero-sum game where if I win, the other lose, and vice versa. They need to start looking at this as a plus-sum game. And I think one important role of the African Union and some of the, how should I say, its wise old men would be to whisper this into the ears of both Kigali and Kinshasa, that they need to start looking at it as a plus-sum game. And then this should now be done in some sort of collaboration or tandem or conversations, both with the Qataris that are involved, but also with the Trump administration. Because the Trump administration has realized that US has strategic interests in DR Congo, lithium and other new minerals that the US is lacking. And the US is concerned about this because China controls a lot of these new minerals that is needed for the transition to a green economy, but also basically to everything that we do today with our phones and so on. And there could also be some, how should I say, Trump personal economic interests in all of this. But we can like or dislike this, but this is how it is. And then actors that are genuinely concerned with finding an end to the war in Eastern Congo needs to try to work with the kind of forces that are both on the ground but also are active internationally. And here I think that both the African Union but also an African diplomacy could probably do a little bit more. It has been these kind of tendencies that some of these previous initiatives has been sort of very much a one president kind of show that certain president would like to be seen as the person who brings peace to the DRC and solve this and get his or her name on it. I think we need to realize that this is much more of a collective process than it may have been treated as in the past.
You were here during the inaugural phase of this forum, and you're here again for the second session, second forum. Now, what will be your recommendation with regards to your observation on how the forum is unfolding?
Yeah, I think the forum is unfolding quite well. I mean, it's very interesting to see, and I think this is also great that Togo's foreign minister, Robert Dutsé, he is present throughout the forum. This is not very often that we see that a foreign minister is present all the way through a forum like this one. I also see that his comrade and colleague from Mali, Diop, is also present here during the entire show, which is quite uncommon, in fact, and that is a good sign, because it means that these are important leaders in West Africa, foreign policy leaders that takes the forum seriously. So that's a very good thing to see. So I do think that there is a balance to be kept there, and at least something that the forum needs to be careful about is that, do they want to attract as many dignitaries as possible, or would they like to concentrate on these panel debates that they have? Right now, I think the balance is okay, but the more dignitaries they bring in, which may be important for various diplomatic purposes and so on, that would also have an effect on what people say in these panels. So that's an important balance that the forum needs to decide for itself how to strike. I would recommend that they keep the balance as it is, that the main thing of this forum is not sort of dignitaries as presidents or whatever who get sort of 5 to 7, 8 minutes to say something, but that the main takeaway from the forum should be the panel and the panel debates.
And when we look at Africa with its youthful population, do you have any message to them? We understand that they equally have a role to play when it comes to peace and security in the continent. Any message for Africa's youth?
Well, I mean, Africa's youth is the future of Africa, and thereby also the future of humanity. And what I see in the various parts of Africa that I work, I see these new generations. They are better educated than any time before, but they are also frustrated, and many of them are angry because they are looking at all the generations of politicians that they think has created just a mess for them, and too many of them feel that even the slimmest chance of social mobility for them upward is effectively blocked. So if each and every one of us, at least from my generation, can in our own small ways harvesting this youthful energy into productivity, into purpose, into democracy, into sustainable development, I think that Africa could take a huge leap forward. If we are not able to harvest this youthful energy and frustration into something productive, I fear for all of us, in fact. But African youth is the future of both Africa and humanity at large.
And that's, of course, very interesting. Thank you very much, Professor Morten Boas. It's been a pleasure having you on Afrique Media. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So thanks a lot, and I wish you the best for the rest of the forum.
Thank you very much. And viewers of Afrique Media, stay with us. We're still live here from Lomé.